Red Shellman.
I pinch.
Deep in the heart of West Texas lies Big Bend National Park, a vast and unforgiving wilderness spanning over 800,000 acres. Bordered by the Rio Grande River and cradled by the ancient Chisos Mountains, this remote expanse is one of the largest, yet least visited national parks in the United States. Scorching Chihuahua Desert lowlands, jagged volcanic peaks rising almost 8,000 feet, and hidden canyons carved over millions of years. Named for the dramatic curve of the Rio Grande, Big Bend is a land of stark beauty and profound isolation, where dark skies, among the clearest in the world, reveal a universe above, yet secrets below. However, despite the fact that it's such a clear-skied place and full of vast open plains, there are a lot of mysteries buried underneath the sands of this desert national park. There are stories that defy explanation, whispers of ghostly cowboys, a murder bull, hidden lost gold, UFO sightings, and more. Hello everyone, welcome to the Big Bend Iceberg. Here we're going to be tackling Big Bend National Park. I mean, if you haven't figured that out already. Yes, I did script that opening, but going forward it's going to be purely conversational, specifically because Big Bend is a place I've been to many times in my life. I absolutely love it. While I am going to be going over some facts about the park, I'm also going to add in some of my personal stories to add that anecdotal flair, but I'm going to avoid using my own personal pictures because I don't want this to become a vacation slideshow, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I appreciate you being here. If this isn't your thing, hey, no problem. I'm glad you made it this far. But please hit the like button and subscribe if at any point in the video you liked it. Dislike it if you disliked it. And I do have now memberships and super thanks available. Now, don't ever feel like you have to give me anything, but if you do, I will be eternally grateful. I can offer you nothing more than my thanks right now, but in the future, who knows what kind of perks I can throw in. So thank you all so much for that. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Layer 1, the Chihuahua Desert. So let's start off by talking about the actual ecosystem of the park. Big Bend lies within the Chihuahua Desert. The Chihuahua Desert's the biggest desert in North America, having over 800,000 acres, being over 300,000 miles of desert. Now, that might sound crazy to you, right? But that's the reality of it. But the Chihuahua Desert goes well past Big Bend. It starts in northern Mexico, goes through Texas, and even ends up in Arizona. It's a desert, so you know it's hot. I don't need to tell you that. Well over 100 degrees in the heat, Fahrenheit, of course. And in the winters can get down to 30s. It was once a home for native peoples and still has native Mexicans across the border. There are plenty of petroglyphs, artographs, and even fossils still being found to this day. Big Bend's desert is a biodiversity hub with over 1,200 plant species and like over 400 bird species. It's a key conservation zone for the Chihuahuan Desert ecosystem. You'll find plenty of wildlife, we'll get into that later, like roadrunners, javelinas, and even mountain lions and black bears. It's a hotspot for rare species. Even a ghostly bull, like I said, we'll get into later, which is unbelievable. But anyway, you definitely need to know about the desert if you go there. Be sure you obviously drink water, be careful of falling, and be careful of snakes and things such as. I mean, it's a desert, right? So, I mean, don't be an idiot. Let's move on. Rio Grande Bend. So the Rio Grande is the river I've already mentioned that where Big Bend gets its name from, where it's got the curve at the park. The Rio Grande is one of the biggest rivers in North America. It's about 1,900 miles. So as far as the park's concerned, when it gets really hot in the summer, it can trickle down to just a puddle. In fact, it's so shallow you can just walk across it. Although maybe don't, because it is a border, so don't do that. But I've been there. It's really murky and muddy, and I did try to do some fishing there as well, but it's so hot. There's nothing going to be in there. Maybe some catfish, but other than that, it's just the Rio Grande River. If you get desperate, you need a shower, or you're too hot, you can always jump in the river and take you a quick bath. Although maybe don't. Again, it's kind of muddy and nasty. Anyway, let's move on. The Chisos Mountains. So the Chisos Mountains are the oasis in the desert. Yes, literally. It is the destination spot when you go to Big Bend. You kind of can't miss it. It's the most populated spot insofar as tourism goes. It has the most things to look at, things to visit, such as it's got the Chisos Mountain Lodge that you can stay in. It's actually got a restaurant, gift shops. It's where the majority of the people are and where the majority of the wildlife are. You see, it's the most habitable place given that it's the highest elevation. It's the coolest area you could be at in the park. Usually, like in my experience, you'll be hanging out around the Chisos Mountain Lodge and you'll see deer just sort of walk up to you. They're not really afraid because nobody hunts them there. They're more worried about, the mountain lions, which are a real threat by the way, and the bears. So I say real threat. I've never personally seen them attack anybody, nor have I ever seen a mountain lion there myself. But I did see black bears on my first trip there, just going up into the mountains. More on that later. Anyway, you drive up the Spiral Mountain and you get to the main hub of the park where there's campsites and things such as, and it's just beautiful. The sights at night and during the day are just amazing. I really wish you could see it for yourself. But again, don't buy into the fact that it's cooler because it has a breeze. It's still hot, still obviously wear your hat and drink your water and things like that. But if you're going to Big Bend, honestly, you could spend the entire, however long your trip is, give it a few days, a week, just in the Chisos Mountains, and you'll be just fine. You'll see plenty of wildlife, and there's plenty of trails to walk, such as the Window View Trail and Emory Peak, which we'll talk about later. But anyway, the Chisos Mountains, check it out. Let's move on. Emory Peak. Emory Peak is the hiker's destination at Big Bend. While it's not nearly the most difficult trail, it will still test you quite a bit, although it's quite a bit safer since so many more people are traveling there. It's the highest peak of Big Bend at nearly 8,000 feet in the air. It was named after William H. Emory, who was a Texas land surveyor in the Army way back in the 1800s. The trail is difficult, like I said, it's a hike. But you also get a lot of shade, you can see a lot of wildlife, pass a lot of people. It's a lot of fun. It all culminates at the very end whenever you get to a steep, rocky climb. I had to pull out some gear myself. Really, you could just climb it, but still be safe. Once you get to the top, do your best Rocky pose, just like I did and everybody else does, because hey, you did it. Now get ready to hike all the way back to camp before nightfall. You wouldn't want to get stalked by one of those mountain lions, would you? Anyway, it's a great experience. It's on a bucket list for hikers for sure. So if you go to Big Bend and you're up for it, check it out for yourself. I guarantee you, you will love it. Let's move on. Dark Sky Park. So Dark Sky Park might sound ominous at first, but really it just refers to the fact that this is one of the places labeled as a Dark Sky Park, meaning that it is so free and clear of light pollution that you could see the stars just amazingly well. It's so clear. It's so beautiful, y'all. Just looking at some of these pictures made me want to cry because I was like, man, I want to go back so bad. I miss it so much. It's a great place to stargaze. It's beautiful. You can see the stars, maybe a meteor here and there, maybe some unexplained phenomena. More on that later. Anyway, it's just a beautiful place for stargazing. That's about it. Let's move on. The Santa Elena Canyon. The Santa Elena Canyon is a gash basically in the mountains separating Mexico and America. It's these limestone walls that raise about 1,500 feet and they're about 8 miles long. The canyon is. There's also a roughly 2-mile round trip trail you can take to view the canyon, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. It echoes like in the movies. There's the river there, of course, and it's just really pretty. It's really beautiful, and you can hike it. There's even times of the year that you can rent canoes either from the locals or the park itself and take a canoe trip down the river through the canyon, which is just amazing. I've never gotten to do that myself, but I certainly like to one day. It's a very beautiful place and it's a must see. It's down there in the southeast corner of the map, I believe. Anyway, y'all should check it out when you go. If you go. Let's move on. Wildlife. So there's so much wildlife to tell you about at Big Bend. I didn't even really know where to begin. Now I've already covered a bit in bears and mountain lions. Those are the big draw of the park. I'll get into those into more detail later. There's like over 400 species of birds there, which is just crazy for me to even think about. I've seen falcons there. They're really cool, gliding through the canyons. There's also plenty of roadrunners. You'll see a lot of them, and they can move. Like straight out of the cartoon, right? Speaking of cartoons, there's also plenty of coyotes. When you think of the desert, you typically think rattlesnakes, coyotes, things such as. Just recently, my best friend was out there camping. He told me a story that he was woken up in the middle of the night only to find out that his campsite was surrounded by coyotes. Now, they did run off pretty easily without a fight, but the fact remains that everybody thinks coyotes are harmless, but they are meat eaters, so you definitely want to watch out, especially if they're hungry. You don't know what they're capable of. Speaking of my best friend, on my second trip to Big Bend, we encountered a group of javelinas, which are small pig-like mammals. Now, there's plenty of them in the park, and they do like to rummage through people's campsites looking for food. That's why they say lock up your food, because they'll tear it up. They'll tear through your campsite. Whether you're there or not, they will invade. So they're pretty mean, they're pretty aggressive. My best friend wanted to get some pictures of them when he saw a pack that was in the area, and he got close to them, but then they ran him up a tree, which is insane. We still talk about it to this day. I was looking on from a safe point. I was like, hey, you got yourself into this, man. You had to get yourself out. And while he's up in the tree, the big ones had their hair raised on their back and like ready to charge and staring them down, while the littler ones were being evacuated, kind of. So it was a pretty neat thing to see. Of course, none of them were harmed. We weren't harmed. It's all good. There's plenty of reptiles and amphibians. I may have already mentioned, like I said, there's rattlesnakes out there. I've seen plenty of those. There's plenty of amphibians that live near the rivers, in the damp areas. I've seen plenty of insects. I've seen tarantulas. Yeah, that's pretty creepy. Be sure to check your boot before you put it back on, right? Of course, there's also the white-tailed deer, which is an exclusive subspecies of deer that's unique to the area, which is pretty crazy. And there's a desert bighorn sheep, which was actually extinct in the area until they were reintroduced in the 1980s. If you see a pack of them off in the distance, they're like phantoms, man, because they can disappear quick. They jump, and it is insane how high and how fast they move. It's unbelievable, but they're used to it. It's what they do. The kangaroo rat is also a rare and unique one that is nocturnal, and I've seen one before, and it's crazy how they jump and how they move. They're adorable, but they are very rare, so keep your eyes out. Other than that, there's plenty more wildlife to explore there at the park, so I hope you get a chance one day to see it for yourself. Now, you might not think there's a lot of wildlife in the desert, but trust me, you would be surprised. There's plenty of fauna all around you. You just need to know where to look. Let's move on. Bokeias Crossing. So with Big Bend being right on the border of Texas and Mexico, there is a legal crossing into Mexico known as the Bokeias Crossing. Bokeias, Mexico, or Bokeias del Carmen, Mexico, is a leftover mining town at one point. They were mining these earth minerals in the desert and the mountains, but now it's just a tourist town. So as long as you have your passport, you can cross over into Mexico. Again, you can just walk across the river, but please don't do that. I don't recommend that ever. Why would you do that? But once you get past the border and you show your passport, you'll be led into Mexico. You can take a boat or you can ride on a donkey like me and my friend did. When you get to the town, it's just a tourist area, and the people that live there survive off of American tourist dollars. I can tell you that I met probably everybody in that town because every last one of them asked me for money for one reason or another. My friend and I went to a restaurant there that they had. We had cabrito tacos, goat meat tacos, and tequila. This is back before I got sober, and it was a lot of fun. We had a good time, took some pictures. Now, you may remember this from earlier videos, but I'm a Latino man myself, and I do speak Spanish decently well. I know I mispronounced Grande earlier, but hey, you gotta get engagement where you can get it, right? So I was able to communicate with the people there. I you know, they were some good people. I have nothing negative to say about them other than the fact that they mobbed me for money. Now, when I was going back across the border, my friend and I was stopped and interrogated by the Border Patrol agents, which I thought was kind of weird because I was like, dude, you just saw me. You specifically just saw me like 2 hours ago. What are you doing? But they let me back in with no problem. You see, you're not allowed to bring over things like tobacco or alcohol over the border, obviously. And they want to make sure you don't have anything like that, you know, whatever. I get it. The Border Patrol agents, they're just doing their job, so don't be freaked out when you see them or if they're a bit stern with you. Anyway, Bokeias is a neat little tourist town that you can go to. Again, just be sure to have cash on you. You can have a good meal, you can take some good pictures, meet some good people, and then come back across the border. It's a good time. I recommend it for sure. Anyway, let's move on. The hot springs. So there are some hot springs at Big Bend near the Rio Grande village. They can get up to about 105 degrees. They're very warm, actually, and there's a trail that you can go down to get to them. You can pass by the limestone caverns, walls. There's a lot of historic things to see that have been recreated. When you get to the hot springs, they do advise, obviously, not to bring any alcohol with you, because for one, drunk people like to litter, broken glass, things such as, and for two, I don't need to tell you why it's a bad idea to drink while you're in a hot spring. You'll die, right? Anyway, it's a lot of fun to go there. It feels really good after a long hike. You can meet some cool people and just relax your bones. Some people have said the hot springs area is kind of creepy at night, a little haunted maybe, but we'll get into some haunted stuff later, believe me. Anyway, check it out for yourself when you get there. Just, you know, don't pollute, please. Anyway, let's move on. The Window View Trail. So this is probably one of the most popular trails at Big Bend, along with the Lost Mine Trail, which I'll get into later. If you go to the Chisos Mountain Lodge, Mountain Store, you can't miss it. It's about a 2-mile round trip hike. It's pretty easy, although it will take a little out of you. When you get to the end of it, you hike up a hill and you can see basically through these two rocks. It's really neat. I really don't know how to describe it. Definitely be careful. It's very slippery, and we'll get into falling deaths in just a minute. But yeah, it's something else. So I really recommend you check that out. Of course, you probably will anyway. It was my first hike there, and I'm sure there'll be many others. So check it out. Can't miss it. Let's move on. Falling deaths. So I do want to, before we go any further about talking about trails, I need to talk about the unfortunate demise that can happen to you if you're not careful at this park. Now, it's a relatively safe park. I can't find any specific numbers, but it's something like less than 30 people have expired at the park in the last, say, 20 to 30 years, as far as I can look up. About a third of that is falling deaths. So definitely be careful while you're there on these trails. A lot of people, they can get dehydrated, you can get vertigo, and accidentally fall off a trail. The reason I'm bringing this up specifically is to tell a story about my personal experience. I did not fall myself, thank God, nor did any of my friends, but my friends and I were on the Lost Mine Trail I've mentioned earlier, and it's a pretty well-populated trail. It's one of the most popular ones there. On our way back from the trail, we got in our vehicle and drove off, and a few hours later, the park was shut down because there had been a death at the park, and we were asking, like, well, what happened? Apparently, someone had fallen on the Lost Mine Trail at the end of it, like, not even an hour after we had left. Someone was trying to take a selfie, obviously, on the edge of the mountain. And this is all anecdotal. This is what I remember, so I'm not naming any names or anything like that. But someone had tried to take a selfie, lost their balance, and fell, and were sadly deceased. And that was while we were there. And it made me think, like, man, we could have passed that person, whoever it was that fell. God rest their soul. But anyway, definitely be careful. Again, falling is only like a third of the deaths that have happened, and there hasn't been that many deaths, you know, believe it or not. But still, definitely be careful if you're there. But anyway, we'll move on. Park size. So this one's kind of out of place, I admit, but I've already mentioned that it's 800,000 acres roughly. Now, the speed limit in the park is like 45, so you're driving kind of slow. To get from one end of the park to the other, it could take you over an hour. It's quite a bit of miles. There are a few gas stations there to fuel up if you're driving. You're going to have to be cautious and make sure you always have plenty of fuel, right? But the park itself is enormous. You cannot see it all in one trip unless you're, I don't know, there for a month or something. But the park itself is massive. You're going to be spending most of your time probably at Chisos, like I said earlier. Anyway, I don't know. This one's out of place. I just wanted to bring up how massive the park itself is. So enjoy that when you're there. Let's move on. Balanced Rock Trail. So probably the third most popular trail aside from the Window and aside from Lost Mine Trail is Balanced Rock Trail. You may have seen this picture either online or in advertisements about Big Bend, but it's basically just a balanced rock. When you go through the trail, you see the rock, and yeah, it's pretty. It's a nice little trail. It can be a lot of fun. I'm not brave enough to stand under it for too long, but maybe you can. Even some brave souls that I know, not mentioning names, have climbed to the top of the rock. So anyway, that's pretty cool. But with that, we'll move on with the next layer. Layer 2, Rio Grande Village and Castalone. I'm going to go ahead and combine these two entries. Now, Rio Grande Village, Castalone, and Chisos Basin are the three main hubs of Big Bend. They're the three main campsite places, although there's plenty of backcountry camping if you know what that is. Most people will go to Chisos, like I've recommended earlier, but you can go to either the west or the east of the park where you can find Rio Grande Village or Castalone, respectively. Rio Grande Village serves as a more of a RV hookup place. There's even showers there, there's a gift shop, and there's campgrounds. And there's Rio Grande access, of course, with the hot springs and the Bokeias Crossing and things such as. On the other side of the park is Castalone, which has another visitor center. Or at least there was another visitor center, and I'll explain that in a second. Castalone has the Cottonwood Campground with no hookups. There's about 31 campsites. It's pretty comfortable as well, much more comfortable than the Rio Grande Village one because it's a lot less, hot and humid in my experience. And there's a lot of cool things to see there as well. Now, I mentioned there was a visitor center. Now, back in 2019, there was a massive Castalone fire sparked by lightning, and it actually spread all the way from one side of the river to the other, which burnt down a lot of the historic sites in Castalone, tragically. You can still visit it, and I believe there's still campsites there, but you'll have to go and see for yourself the wreckage that Mother Nature has wrought. Anyway, aside from Chisos, there's Rio Grande Village and Castalone that you can go visit, and I recommend you see them all, although don't try to go from one side of the park to the other because you'll waste about 2 hours of your day. But anyway, check them out for yourself. Let's move on. Mexican black bear comeback. Alright, it's finally time to talk about the bears. So, Big Bend National Park is home to some black bears. Now, they're not 1,000-pound grizzly bears, but they are still dangerous. The adult males can be like 200 to 300 pounds, and females being closer to 100 to 200 pounds. They stand about 5 to 6 feet from nose to tail, and they are omnivores. However, they rarely eat meat. They usually focus on berries and nuts and things such as, although they're still dangerous, so don't get close to one if you see it. So here's a funny story for you. On my first trip to Big Bend, my best friend and I rolled up on some black bears on the road, and we wanted to take some pictures, but they had ran away fast before we could, get a picture of them. So we drove to the first park ranger we could find to let him know, hey, some of these black bears that you're trying to protect are on the road, so, just keep an eye out or something. And they gave me this McDonald's looking ass certificate that says, you and your friend saw a black bear at Big Bend. I still have it framed. I'm looking at it now. It's neat. Anyway, I say black bear comeback because at one point they were completely gone from the park. You see, around the time of the 1950s, the black bears had been hunted and unfortunately, tragically, had been unalived for just game purposes, and they were thought to be extinct from the park. However, sometime in the 80s, a couple of black bears actually migrated back to the park from the areas of Mexico, and they've grown ever since. There's estimated to be roughly 40 to 50 bears living in Big Bend now, And again, while they're not typically dangerous or not typically attacking people, they will rummage through your campsite. And any animal, doesn't matter what they are, if they're around their children, their cubs, for example, they're going to be dangerous. So watch out. Again, they're not nearly as big as you would see in a movie, an American grizzly bear, but they are out there. So keep an eye out. The Sam Nail Ranch Ruins. All right, so located off of Ross Maxwell Scenic Drive, which is a road in Big Bend, about 3.5 miles into it, is the Sam Nail Ranch Ruins. Sam and Jim Nail were two brothers that moved from central Texas to the area to start a ranch. They dug a well and put a windmill over it to pump water, which worked really well. And they built a home themselves and built a ranch, and they both had families that lived there as well with them. However, they had a hard time when the droughts came, and then there was the Great Depression. But luckily for them, in the late 1930s, they sold their land to the government, which was about to create the Big Bend National Park. And some of their homestead still remains to this day. You can still see the windmill, which is upkept and still pumping water to this day, which is actually supplying water for the local animals and the local plant life. And there's still a little bit of some walls left over. There's really not much, but there's evidence of their homestead life, which is really cool to go back and look at. I'd really be interested to see it again. It's really neat to look at and to think about how these two brothers made it in a desert of all places, able to raise animals and be self-sufficient. There's a lot I want to say, but I'll keep it to myself. Check it out for yourself. Let's move on. The Homer Wilson Ranch. All right, so this one's quite a bit more upkept as opposed to the Sam Nail Ranch, and it has a similar story. He was a geologist and a World War I veteran. He bought 30,000 acres in 1920, aiming to build a cattle and goat empire with his wife, Mary Bell. He constructed the one-room stone house using local limestone and wood beam. The ranch was somewhat successful up until the 1930s, once again with the Great Depression and the droughts. In 1943, he sold his land as well to the U.S. government, but unfortunately, he passed away not even a year later, so he wasn't, I guess, able to relocate or whatever. So you can go visit this ranch to this day. It's about 15 miles into the Ross Maxwell Scenic Drive, about 12 miles south of Sam Nail Ranch, as a matter of fact. It's now considered a historic site. And of course, some people have claimed that you can go at night or in the evening and you might see the ghost of Homer Wilson himself mourning the loss of his ranch and his empire, which really wasn't that much to begin with. But anyway, rest in peace, Homer Wilson. Check out this lovely property yourself. Don't pollute, don't litter, or else, I guess. Anyway, check it out for yourself. It's pretty cool. Let's move on. The U.S. border. So, as I've already mentioned, Big Bend National Park is on the border of the state of Texas and Mexico, the U.S. and Mexico, and as such, there's plenty of Border Patrol agents in the park. There's plenty of Border Patrol checkpoints onto the roads going into the park as well. Now, I'm not here to say anything negative about the Border Patrol. That's not what I do. And the border itself is not anything like you may have seen on the news or on the internet. There's no big wall or anything like that. You could throw a rock from one end in Texas and it land in Mexico. It's right there. Now, the reason it's a lot more lax is because even if a Mexican national were to cross into America, where would they go? Because there's border checkpoints everywhere, and even if they manage to elude them, it's hundreds of miles of desert. Not to mention, it's like an hour drive to the nearest town from the park, so it would be quite a journey for them, so I imagine that's why it's more lax. They'd rather just stay in Mexico. You would honestly be surprised at how many border agents are Hispanic themselves. When I was there, it was like half of them were Hispanic. They may stop you, ask you for your ID, and ask you a few questions, but they are just doing their job, although I found it to be kind of annoying. I do want to say a funny story, though. I'm not implying anything, but as I've already said, I am Hispanic myself. And during my second trip to Big Bend, I actually lost my ID. Yes, it was a tragedy, and I'll get into it more later. But I was a little concerned because I'm Hispanic. I hadn't had a shower in a while, so I looked dirty. My facial hair had grown out, and I had a severe tan from the sun because it's the desert, and I didn't have my ID. So I was panicking and freaking out, and I'm like, oh man, they're gonna send me across the border. I don't know what to do. I tried to sound as white as I could, but the border agents didn't even say anything about it. They just looked at me and said, you're good. So I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was funny, but yes, there's plenty of border agents at the park. Don't be alarmed. They're just doing their job, and they are trying to keep the country safe from illegal immigration. But anyway, I've never heard of any Mexican nationals attacking anybody. I've never heard of any major crime happening because of it. A lot of them do want to just behave because they want the tourism to keep coming into Bokeias. All that money that's coming in from the tourists that goes into Mexico, they want to keep that going, so they're not going to cause any problems. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Let's move on. Marathon, Texas. All right, so Marathon, Texas is a small town that borders Big Bend National Park. Although I say border, it's about 50 miles away due north. It's one of a few towns that borders the park, such as Terlingua, which we'll get into later, and Bokeias, which is obviously in Mexico. Marathon is a very small town. It's a tourist town. It's got less than 500 permanent residents. I don't think it's ever had over 1,000 since its inception. Now, because it's a tourist town, there's a lot of little shops. There's a place to get coffee. There's places to eat, gift shops, and whatever else. The biggest attraction to Marathon is the historic Gage Hotel. It was built in the late 20s, but had some financial hardships due to the Great Depression, which seems to keep coming up on this iceberg, unfortunately, for some reason. However, it was later built and restored and now stands as just this amazing structure in this tiny little town. I recommend you give it a shot. Stay one night if you're in the area. The rates were pretty reasonable last time I checked. However, there is a restaurant attached to this hotel, and that's pricey. So I remember one trip, me and my friend were there, and we had never eaten there before, so we decided to give it a shot. We sat down and looked at the menus, and after we sat in silence for a few minutes, I finally looked up and I said, "Hey S, do you want to split a salad?" Anyway, it's pricey, but the food was pretty good. It better be good, I tell you that much. The rooms are great. It's a beautiful place, and the town is great. And there's a lot of nice places to take pictures. Everybody's pretty friendly because, they want your money. But anyway, check it out for yourself. Marathon, Texas. You kind of can't miss it if you're coming from the north. So it's a nice little town. Let's move on. Big Bend Ranch State Park. Now, this gets confusing. I'll try to not say it too often. But conveniently next to Big Bend National Park is Big Bend Ranch State Park. It's a mouthful. I keep getting tripped up. Anyway, in the early 1990s, the state park was opened up. It's a bit more rugged. There's still hiking, camping to do. There's a lot more things to do with animals like horseback riding and things such as. But they don't have any synergy with the national park because, well, one's run by the federal government and one's run by the state government. Therefore, the state park has a lot less regulations, and you could see it as a lot more fun, although a lot more rugged or challenging. Anyway, it's easy to get confused, but there is a state park right next to the government park by the same name, except for ranch in the middle of it. That's interesting. Anyway, just imagine like you move into town and you want to open up a pizza parlor, so you open it up right next to Domino's Pizza that's already in town. I mean, talk about ruthless. Anyway, let's move on. Cougars, or mountain lions. So I've teased this quite a bit. Mountain lions are the apex predator of Big Bend National Park. They are the big draw. They're what everybody talks about. They're what everybody wants to see. They're probably the rarest sight at the park, given that over 800,000 acres, there's only estimated to be somewhere under 25 of them even roaming the park to this day. They are incredibly dangerous, just like the black bear. However, there's been probably less than 20 attacks in the past 50 years. It's very uncommon for a mountain lion to attack a person for any reason. They are carnivores and they are meat eaters, But they know better than to mess with people, as typically a mountain lion attacks a person, it has to be put down, unfortunately. And I know I make them sound dangerous, but regularly mountain lion attacks happen all across the US, and a grown adult man is typically able to fight it off with his bare hands. That said, though, don't be fooled. If a mountain lion does walk up on you, the worst thing you can do is run away. You're supposed to stand your ground, throw rocks at it, yell at it, and it'll realize it's not worth it. However, you'll rarely ever see one, as they're smart enough not to attack a group of people. Locals will tell you that if you really want to see a mountain lion bad enough, you need to go hiking alone, either in the middle of the night or in the evening or morning hours, and you might find one stalking you. Basically, instead of going looking for mountain lions find you. Mountain lions are absolutely terrifying. If you hear them screaming, they sound like just the most demonic woman ever. Check this out.
The woman scream.
Yeah, imagine hearing that when you're in your tent alone at night. Yeah, what the hell? Talk about the Blair Witch Project. Anyway, like I said, mountain lions are dangerous, but you also shouldn't be scared to go anywhere because of a mountain lion. You need to respect them, not necessarily fear them. Now, like I said before, I have never seen a mountain lion. At least that's halfway true, because I did see a cougar, not in the park, but outside of the park in Terlingua. Let me tell you a quick story. So my buddy T and I were out at a bar in Terlingua. Yeah, this is before I got sober. A lot of my stories start with before I got sober. Anyway, we were at a bar drinking together, and a cougar actually approached my friend T at the bar. It was vicious and dangerous. It bared its claws and fangs, but for whatever reason, it decided to back off. He nearly lost his life that day. Or, I don't know, something else may have happened. Anyway, let's move on. Terlingua, Texas. So Terlingua is another town that borders Big Bend. It's right on the west side of it. It's pretty close. So Terlingua is another tourist town, but it's a little bit different from Marathon, whereas Marathon is openly welcoming to tourists. Perilingua is more tolerant, at least in my experience, because they understand that's what the economy needs, but they're also their own community. They live out there in the desert, they like it, they have their own lives, and they're good people. So as long as you don't go up there acting like a tourist, you should be fine. Just don't go looking for that cougar I mentioned. Anyway, or you can find a lot of gifts there, you can find a good meal, they have lodging that's quite a bit less expensive than in the national park. It's a good time. They even host the annual Terlingua Chili Cook-Off, so apparently it's internationally famous, I guess, but if you're there around that time, go and check it out. There's also the Terlingua Ghost Town District, but we'll get into that a little later. Anyway, Terlingua. Big Bend is a hotbed for fossils. There's been over 1,200 fossil discoveries in the park. In 2017, they unveiled their fossil exhibit where you can go and take a look at some of the things that have been discovered throughout the years. And of course, if you happen to find a fossil at Big Bend, you're supposed to not touch it, not play with it, do nothing like that. You can get busted for it, which sounds kind of mean, but I get it. What makes this entry so interesting to me is that just last month, in March of 2025, some university students found almost an entirely full fossil of an Alamosaurus, or at least the spine of it. It's basically intact. Now, these fossils apparently come from over 100 million years ago when the area was all underwater. So that's pretty crazy. If you go to Big Bend now and you're just, I don't know, digging around or looking around, you might stumble across a huge fossil. This is an amazing find. It's pretty incredible. Check it out for yourself. Look online, or when you're at the park, go look at the exhibit. Anyway, with that, we'll move on. Layer 3. Juniper Canyon Trail. Alright, so there's a lot of trails at Big Bend. I already went over the Window View and Lost Mine and Emory Peak. Now, you'll find a lot of these trails on the map marked for people to go and hike, but there's plenty of trails that are more hidden, and that's not necessarily because they don't want people on the trail. It's that they don't want people on the trail that have no idea what they're doing. Some of these trails are insane, especially if you take them in the spring or the summer, because it's the desert, it's hot. One of those trails is the Juniper Canyon Trail. It's so hard to find information about, even online, as a lot of people haven't even tried it. Most rangers say it's not even upkept. And of course, if there's not a lot of people hiking it, what do you think that's going to attract? More wildlife. So you can see there's a lot of danger here. There is a spring towards the middle or the end of this trail. However, most springs in Big Bend are usually dried up at all times of the year, just depending on, if there's been any rain lately or not. So you can't count on there being natural water. You have to bring over a gallon of water per person on this trail. So let me begin by telling you how do you even get there. So this is a 12.5-mile out and back adventure at Big Bend. And again, it's not for those that have health conditions or are just not used to hiking. Don't try this on your own, period. And if you are, let someone know where you're going to be. And like I said, bring more than a gallon of water. So it starts at the Chisos Basin Visitor Center. Yeah, no kidding, the biggest area in the park. But then you have to hike through Laguna Meadow Trail, which is about 4 miles itself, or the Pinnacles Trail, which is 3.5 miles, to reach Boot Canyon Trail, which will then, after a while, connect to the Juniper Canyon Trail. So it takes 6 miles just to get there. This whole trail is a marathon, no pun intended. This is a gauntlet. So you're going to spend the entire day and then some just on the trail itself going to hike it. You're going to want to let someone know where you are, just saying that outright. Anyway, is it even worth it? Well, most hikers say no. The only reason you do it is that you just want to do it. You just want bragging rights. You just want to be like, yo, I'm big balls over here. You know what I'm saying? Goodness me, I've never even heard of this one. So next time me and my friends are in Big Bend, we're a lot older now, but maybe we'll train up for it because I would like to go for it myself. I'll tell you what, this video ever gets 50,000 views in its lifetime, I will go there. I will commit to attempting it one day and take pictures. I won't be able to live stream, obviously, and I'll probably die. So if you don't like me, hey, that's a good reason to get rid of me. But yeah, we'll see. Anyway, Juniper Canyon Trail. Oh, by the way, it's named after the weeping juniper trees. Not sure if I mentioned that. Anyway, let's get on to some other trails. Let's move on. The Cattails Falls Trail. Okay, so this one might actually get me in trouble with Big Bend and hiking enthusiasts because it's more of a secretive hush-hush kind of thing, mostly because they want to protect the fragile ecosystem, and it's an best experienced blind. So I'm not going to be telling you how to get there. I will share some pictures, though, that I found online. So Cattails Falls Trail is a literal oasis in the desert. It's beautiful. It's quite frankly breathtaking. I really can't describe it any other way. But it is a tough hike. It's only 3 miles, but what makes it tough is that there's almost no shade to get there until you're maybe really close to it. You'll begin to hear the waterfall rushing, if there's water, of course. Bring your own water, of course. Don't bother thinking you're going to find water to drink because obviously, for one, it might not be there, and for two, it might get you sick. I recommend that any hiking enthusiast that wants to see it, go see it. I'm going to encourage you to be social, though, and go and ask around when you're at the park. See if anybody will tell you how to get there. I'm not going to advertise it too much more, though. Just go check it out for yourself. But I will say one thing. You know what else likes water in the desert? Yeah, keep an eye out. Let's move on. Terlingua Abajo Campsites. So this entry just refers to the fact that there's a lot of primitive campsites at Big Bend, and what I mean by primitive is that there's nothing out there except for a bear box, a place to store your food. Yeah, they don't want you eating or having any food out, period, because animals like javelinas, black bears will sniff it out. So be cautious of that. I don't remember why I specifically singled this one out, but it is in a beautiful part of Big Bend. It is one of the well-known backcountry camping sites. They call it backcountry because it's not on the road, and you have to let a ranger know if you're going to be camping there to, one, reserve it, for two, to let them know where you're going to be at in case you go missing or whatever else. So check them out for yourself. There's plenty of these backcountry camping sites in the park. Again, I don't really remember why I singled this one out, but it's pretty, though it's a lot of heat, so definitely bring shade of some kind. Anyway, let's move on. The Starlight Theater. All right, so this is in the eerie ruins of Terlingua Ghost Town, which I'm about to get into. The Starlight Theater is a kind of place that just, when you get there, it just, I don't know, you feel like you're walking into old school Wild Wild West. Obviously, it's modernized and been restored, but it's a restaurant, bar, and grill. It got a live venue. It's got music from time to time. It's a good little tourist area in Terlingua. Check it out for yourself. It was built in the 1930s and it's been obviously restored. You can go hang out there on the porch, have a few drinks if that's what you do, have a meal. It's a good place to be at. It's a good time to be had if you're on vacation. So check it out for yourself. Let's move on. Perilingua Ghost Town. All right, so I wish I could say there was a bunch of scary stories here, but really it's just a ghost town because it's very lowly inhabited. It's right by Terlingua itself that I've already mentioned. I may have forgot to mention Terlingua basically translates to trace lingua, which is about 3 tongues, if I'm reading it correctly. Terlingua Ghost Town is a ghost town because at one point it was a mining town where people were mining mercury in the area. But as mercury demand plummeted after World War II, the place slowly became abandoned. It just kind of became Terlingua. But it was revitalized in the 70s, obviously needing to have a place for tourists to come to. The Starlight Theater was rebuilt, which I may have forgot to mention just now earlier that Starlight Theater used to be a theater home. Like you could go and watch shows, and now it's a bar and grill, like I just said a minute ago. Anyway, Terlingua Ghost Town is more of a touristy area, but you can go see some really cool old-fashioned sort of buildings, some grave sites, and some decorations. It's really pretty. You can take a lot of pictures. Again, just don't disturb the locals too much, obviously. There are people that live there that just, it's their home year long, and they don't give a damn about tourists. Of course, many of them do, obviously. And of course, if you're lucky, you can attend the chili cook-off that happens. That's the big draw of the entire area, even though it's in such a remote part of Texas. It's world famous, apparently. Anyway, with that, let's move on. Marathon Target. Alright, so this refers to the fact that for whatever reason, there's a Target store in Marathon, Texas, despite the fact that Marathon is so tiny. Okay, it's not actually a Target store. It's an abandoned building on some guy's property that I believe some vandals or some artists, probably the owner knows about it, decided to put a Target logo on top of, and then other people came and put the actual Target lettering on there. It looks identical to a Target and with the shopping cart complete in front of it. So how these people got a hold of this, I have no idea, but it looks like a Target logo. I would say check it out for yourself, but sadly that's the reason it's no longer there. Back around 2020, the owner decided to take it all down because he was afraid that people would get hurt, right? People walking into the building thinking, oh, this is a neat little photo op, this is funny, and then there's a rattlesnake chilling in the shade there. That wouldn't be good, right? And, you know, somebody would try to sue over it. Anyway, it's no longer there, but you can still find pictures online. If you've seen it for yourself, I mean, if you know, one of those things. But it was a neat little visitors attraction there in Marathon. Let's move on. Marisco Mines. So the Marisco Mines are tucked in the southeast corner of the park. From about 1900 to 1943, it churned out about 1,400 flasks of quicksilver, nearly a quarter of the U.S. total, mined from red cinnabar by Mexican workers who faced absolutely brutal conditions. They earned about $1 to $2 a day doing back-breaking labor, and they suffered from severe mercury poisoning that rotted their teeth, lungs, and everything else. It was founded by the rancher Martin Solis. It passed through owners like Ed Lindsay and Isaac Sanger before closing down when World War II shifted priorities. And now it's just another part of the park, but it's a historical district. Now, to even get here, you have to go down some roads that aren't upkept. In fact, it's so bad they recommend that you have to have a 4x4 pickup or other vehicle in order to even get there. And once you do, there's warning signs everywhere about don't touch anything as it might be tainted by mercury and it might, kill you. right? So there's actual mine shafts, so they've been closed down, but you know, that doesn't mean you should go walking on top of them, because then they fall through, and that's how a horror movie begins, right? Now, there are some spooky ghost stories that people have said. Hikers have said they have seen and heard ghostly apparitions. They've heard ghostly wails, and I mean, rightly so, right? This mine was open for 40 years, basically killing people for nothing. So if there is an area of Big Bend that's haunted, that's got to be it, right? It's absolutely terrible what happened to those people back then, but it's also a really neat building. So be respectful when you get there, if you can get there. I don't even know if I would want to risk taking it, because all the stories I hear are that it's incredibly difficult to even get to this place. And if you're in the middle of the desert, getting your vehicle stuck is a bad, bad way to be, right? And then we're talking about ancient mines that are sealed off, that people used to work in, ghostly apparitions, and you know what I mean? So, yeah, definitely be careful. Anyway, check it out for yourself if you want. Anyway, let's move on. Glen Springs Cemetery and Glen Springs Raid. So on May the 5th, 1916, the Glen Spring Raid occurred. It shattered a quiet desert village in what's now Big Bend National Park. Mexican raiders, about 100 of them strong, struck Glen Springs and Bokeias, driven by the Mexican Revolution. They targeted a Candelilla wax factory and a U.S. cavalry outpost. 3 soldiers burned or fell in a fiery stand, and a 7-year-old boy, the son of a storekeeper, was shot dead amidst the chaos, their deaths edging tragedy into the land. No exact toll exists of the deaths, necessarily, but apparently dozens of workers perished over time from their wounds, their fates buried in silence. The Glen Springs Cemetery has over 10 unmarked graves, including the boys, lying across Glen Draw, its weathered stones a mute testament to the loss. To reach this site from Persimmon Gap entrance, you need to drive about 20 miles south to Panzer Junction from the entrance. You need to grab a permit to go backcountry again, then take Ross Maxwell Scenic Drive west to Glen Springs Road. This is a 16-mile gravel road, which again, you need a high clearance vehicle, 4-wheel drive or whatever else, to get there. It's going to take you about an hour. And of course, when you get there, be respectful, don't pollute, and be cautious, because again, there's no shade, there's no water, and there's no help anywhere nearby. And of course, there's, a cemetery, so you can imagine the creepiness factor of it. But you can check this out for yourself. It's another sad story, but another interesting part of Big Bend's history. Let's move on. Marufo Vega Trail. Alright, so these next two really show off the absolute brutality of the desert, and I will stress again to be very careful when you're on these trails. I personally have never done this one, but I have attempted the second one, but I had to turn around, and the second one is a lot less long, but even still, it was so hot that I just couldn't take it, and I had to come back because I did not feel well. Anyway, the Marufo Vega Trail. This is a 14-mile loop in Big Bend southeast, a brutal trek named after Gregorio Marufo, a Mexican goat herd whose spirit locals say still haunts these hills. From its trailhead near Bokeias Canyon, it climbs 3,800 feet through the Dead Horse Mountains limestone cliffs and dry bone washes, splitting at 3.5 miles into north and south forks with stunning views of the Sierra del Carmen and the Rio Grande. So right off the bat, we have haunted by an old Mexican goat herder. We have Dead Horse Mountains. Come on, you already know this is going to be bad, right? It suffers from over 100-degree heat. It's really bad. Plenty of hikers have passed away on this trail. In fact, just October of 2024, last year, a 24-year-old hiker was found dead on this trail. 24 years old, right? So can you imagine? That's young, that's strong, healthy, you would think, and even they couldn't make it. And this was October. This wasn't in the middle of summer. It's absolutely insane. 14 miles. So basically, you would want to go get a backcountry camping permit to go and camp out halfway through this trail if you're even going to survive. It's pretty brutal unless you're ready for it. But you get a lot of very nice, very awesome views, and you're surrounded by all points of Mexico, basically south, west, and east. So this is something I probably would never even attempt. It just looks dangerous. It just looks terrifying. But yeah, check it out for... You know what? No, I'm not going to recommend checking this out. Don't even check it out. Only check it out in Minecraft, quote unquote. Only if you're totally prepared and you have more water than you could even physically carry. Anyway, with that, let's move on. The Mule Ears Trail. Alright, so again, I've tried this one before, me and my boy T, but the thing is, it was just incredibly hot and we had to turn around. It's in that sweet spot in the desert, though I guess sweet would be not the right word for it, but it's just in that perfect elevation for just extreme heat, and there's no shade. This one's only about 4 miles round trip, that is out and back in Big Bend, and it's rated as moderate, so I mean, maybe I'm just a big baby, but there's not really that much hiking. It's just a lot of gravel roads, and there's no shade, like I've said before, whatsoever. But at the end of this, you will find a spring, another oasis similar to Cattails that I told you about earlier. That's if the water's not dried up, and that's a whole nother thing. Anyway, you start this one seemingly just with no shade in the middle of nowhere. So, okay, start hiking. And you have to hike to these mule ears. So, mule ears, as they call them, are just two giant rocks that resemble mule ears. I mean, I would have loved to have seen it in person, but again, I was just not ready for it at the time, and I'm a lot older now, and I'm roughly the same weight, but I'm older, and just shut up, I'm a gamer, leave me alone. Anyway, I'd love to try this again myself. Some of the pictures are great. I have some unfinished business, let's say. But again, just like with the last trail, don't attempt any of these unless it's, safe, unless you have the water or the experience, the training, things such as. So it'd be nice to see one day instead of just pictures. Anyway, with that, we'll move on to the next layer. Layer 4, the grave of Juan de Leon. So this one is one of the tragic mysteries of Big Bend, one that will more than likely never be solved, of course. So off of Old Ore Road, which is yet another old desert road that you need a strong vehicle to even get down, lies a solitary grave marker. It's a cross that says Juan de Leon, born June 24th, 1906 in Bokeias del Carmen, Coa, died July 19th, 1932. So what exactly happened to Juan is unclear. Apparently he was riding his horse down a desert road, and then several days later his body was found. However, it had been so picked apart and exposed to the sun that they could not move the body and just buried him there. His death was so insignificant it wasn't even mentioned in the newspapers, and no one knows who killed him or why. Now, there are theories that it was just random Anglos that just didn't like Mexicans and just shot him. That's probably the Occam's razor answer, but again, we have no idea, and it will never be solved. But thankfully, Juan does have a marker that survives to this day. It's just another example of some of the tragic harshness of the wild, wild west of the desert. And it's so cool to me that there's so many mysteries just in the middle of nowhere. Like, this is off a dirt road that most people will never even be able to go down, and it's kind of sad that most people clicked off the video in the first 10 minutes and didn't get this far to some of the more interesting ones, but what are you gonna do? Anyway, be sure to pay your respects if you manage to make it down Old Ore Road. But again, don't get your vehicle stuck, because a lot of spirits wandering around there, Anyway, let's move on. Chisos Ghosts. Alright, so this one was such an interesting rabbit hole to go down, but one thing that I didn't mention and or purposefully omitted was the fact that the Chisos Mountains are actually named after the Chisos or Chiso native tribe that was in the area that was basically a spin-off of an Apache tribe. So they were a nomadic desert people, and they had clashes a lot with the Anglo people as well as the Mexican people. The last chief before they were wiped out, Chief Alzate, was marched as well as with the last of the tribe, and were gunned down by a firing squad in the Chisos Mountains, and the last of their people were extinguished. At least as far as I can research. If you know anything else about it, comment below. Let me know. Anyway, I'm trying to be respectful here, but that's all the information I could get. But essentially, because of this, people believe that the Chisos Mountains themselves are haunted. Now, granted, you could point at any space of any place on Earth and say it's haunted because somebody died there, and rightfully so, which is another reason why you shouldn't pollute. Not only is it bad for the environment, but you never know whose grave you're throwing a Cheez-Its wrapper on or something, right? But anyway, a lot of people say that the Chisos Mountains are haunted themselves, and if you're hiking in the middle of the night alone, or maybe you're with one other person or whatever, in a tent, you never know what the noises you're hearing outside are. They could be javelinas, they could be birds, they could be snakes, they could be a mountain lion, or it could be the disembodied spirit of the once great Chisos tribe. Anyway, pleasant thoughts. Let's move on. Marisco Mines spirits. Alright, so this one I'm kind of repeating myself. I already went into enough detail earlier. At the Marisco Mines, people have claimed to have seen orbs, spirits. They've heard strange noises coming from the mine shafts that are closed down and boarded up. So yeah, definitely be careful when you're there. Just don't fall in or else you'll have a bigger problem. But people have heard spirits that it's haunted. And I mean, come on, if any place was going to be haunted in the park, it would be that one. Anyway, let's move on. Mesa de Anguilla. So at first this one may seem out of place, but there's a lot of spooky stories associated with this area of Big Bend as well. Hikers have reported shadowy watchers off in the distance, just far enough away that you can't make out what they are. Kind of like those Hell Valley Sky Tree, if you know what I'm talking about, in Mario Galaxy. Anyway, supposedly there's also a spring somewhere in this area that I can't find any information on. It's just some rumors online that it's named after a park worker that passed in 1995, but this just throws up red flags to me, as only one person's ever said, hey, check this out, but I don't know. The fact of the matter is, it's just another hike close to Mexico, and supposedly there's spirits watching you off in the distance. Anyway, let's move on. The Marfa Lights. So the Marfa Lights is a commonly known ghost story in the area, although it's actually pretty far from the park itself. It's commonly associated with it, so I threw it in here. The Marfa Lights were sighted as early as the late 1800s, and to this day have no explanation as to what they are. They're just lights you see off in the distance. Now, the rumors, the ghost stories are they're ghostly campfires from the Chiso people, the spirits, still having their ghostly, I guess, meetings or get together or whatever else. Or whatever other ghost story you want to associate with it. I mean, to be fair, these could just be some phenomena we don't know about yet. But it's still a creepy story, and it's a big draw to Marfa itself, which is another small town in the area, little under 2,000 people. Anyway, if you want to check it out for yourself, you can when you're near the park or if you're on your way out. It is a distance, but anyway. Lunas Jacal. So Lunas Jacal is a dugout home built by a man named Gilberto Luna. It's off of Old Maverick Road, which is another road you'll need a 4x4 vehicle to go down, although this one's not as bad. I have been here before, and let me tell you, it is crazy how cool it is on the inside of this building. As in, it feels like you're in an air-conditioned building. It's nuts. I don't know if that's ghostly spirits, I doubt it, but the way it was built was incredible. So Gilberto Luna built this home, and he lived in the area for a long time. Supposedly, he lived to be 108 years old. Yes, this man was a legend in the area and well respected all the way up until his death. And he had supposedly 9 children, which just sounds insane to me. This all sounds nuts, but hey, I believe it. Anyway, if you go to the area, check it out for yourself. Like I said, you'll be amazed at just how he was able to build this thing. But anyway, with that, let's move on. The Phantom Rider. So this one was hard to get any information on. This one is just rumors. Anytime you look up Phantom Rider, it just brings up 1,000 images of Ghost Rider, which doesn't help. But apparently hikers have seen and heard a ghostly cowboy riding a horse in the mountains, mostly on Lost Mine Trail. Again, this could all just be ghost stories, but hey, as far as I know, there's no wild horses in Chisos Mountains, so if you hear or see a horse and you're hiking, it might not be a horse. It might be the ghost of a horse or something such as. Let's move on. Ghost radio signals. All right, so anyone that's listened to the radio in a remote part of the world anywhere will tell you that when you hear staticky stations, it can sound pretty creepy, right? In Big Bend specifically, hikers and other people have reported that sometimes on random stations you'll hear what appears to be garbled mess. It could be something creepy sounding or people's voices over the radio and it's unexplained. Now, you could explain this, obviously, with just the fact that it's a wide open area and there's mountains where radio signals are bouncing off of, and that could be coming from a long ways away, maybe in Mexico or in the US, but who knows? There are stories of ghosts and UFOs in the area, so where could these signals be coming from? What could their origin be? I don't know. It's kind of creepy, but anyway, let's move on. Layer 5. UFO rare earth mineral deal. All right, so this is not a joke actually. It's more of a rumor, conspiracy theory, or whatever else that apparently the area of Big Bend is still rich in resources. Remember, there's mercury. There were mercury mines at one point. This theory posits that UFOs come to the area frequently to mine these materials, these minerals, or whatever else. The theory goes even further to say that the US government is not only aware but is in on it, and that's why national parks are protected and will occasionally close for seemingly no reason so that these aliens can come and collect, essentially. Again, this is just a kooky conspiracy theory, but I don't know. You think about the radio signals, the ghost sightings, the Marufo lights, and all the above, and what could really be going on. Let's move on. Rio Grande is haunted. So the Rio Grande being haunted is nothing new. There's a movie, there's ghost stories out that tie back to old Mexican legends about La Llorona. La Llorona being the weeping woman who can be heard crying, looking for her drowned children. Now, there's a lot of horror movies, like I said, horror stories revolving around this woman. I don't want to show you any creepy pictures. You can check it out for yourself. But apparently, in the canyons at night, people have reported hearing a weeping woman or a screaming woman or something like that. Now, we already know what else in the park sounds like a screaming woman, don't we? Yeah. So, which actually might be more dangerous if you think about it. But yeah, the Rio Grande being haunted. Don't check it out? Let's move on. Lost Gold of Chisos. All right, so this one refers to the legend of the Lost Mine, a la the Lost Mine Trail in the Chisos Mountains. Apparently, a rich mine full of gold and other minerals, again, see rare earth mineral deal, was discovered in Chisos, and the Mexicans, the Mexican government, I guess, forced a local tribe, the Chiso, to mine this gold against their will. The legend states that these natives actually eventually revolted against the Mexican people and slaughtered them. And then, once they were victorious, they hid the mine so well that no one would ever find it again, seeing it as a place of great tragedy and anguish and despair. So, this is why it's called the Lost Mine Trail, because apparently there's a lost gold mine somewhere on this trail. Again, this could just be rumors and old stories, but still kind of creepy. Maybe you'll be the first one to discover this lost mine. However, if you do, no telling what else you'll find or what will find you. Let's move on. Missing hikers. All right, this one's a mistake. I apologize. I meant to take this one off. But as far as I can tell, there's actually no cases of hikers being missing or without some kind of resolution in the park, which is surprising. I did read up on some and I thought it was connected, but it actually was a different park, so I apologize. But if you know of any stories like this, let me know in the comments. And obviously, don't get lost or fall or get bitten by a rattlesnake or abducted by aliens or fall into a mine. Well, let's move on. My lost wallet. All right, this one's not a joke. It's some more hidden treasure at Big Bend. At some point on my second Big Bend trip, I lost my wallet. It was a red Legend of Zelda wallet. It had cash in it and my old ID and some old, bank cards. Now, I canceled all those, obviously. I know. Why am I talking about this? Well, because the thing is, if you manage to find it, you'll be the first one, as I tried to find it for a long time. I called the park. No one ever reported it. So it's some lost treasure. There's some cash in there that I don't ever expect to see again. This was maybe 10 years ago now. So if you're in Big Bend and you find a red Legend of Zelda wallet somewhere in the sand, hey, you know what? You'll have the biggest treasure you could possibly have. You'll have my real identity, which I'm never going to show on YouTube, hopefully. Anyway, let's move on. The murder bull. All right, so this one's not referencing a bull that's a murderer or a bull that was murdered or something. No, it's just called murder bull, and there actually is some legend and some documentation behind this. Let me explain. So the murder bull apparently is a ghost story from January the 20th, 1891. I don't know how they got that specific date, but two ranchers feuded over an unbranded bull, Henry Powell, and Find Gilliland. They fought over it, where Gilliland shot Powell, and Powell was expired. And then later on, Gilliland himself was killed in a shootout, and this bull was set free, only it was cursed. It now has the brand murder on it, like the word murder. I guess not murderer, just murder. And supposedly people have seen this ghostly bull around Chisos and around the area. So I will say right off the bat, if you just see a bull, period, and it's outside of a pen, that's a big problem alone. But if you see a bull outside of a pen and it's got the word murder written on it, yeah, that's not good. Let's move on. Final layer. Chisos murder myths. All right, so in doing the research for kind of creepy stories with Big Bend, I heard that there is something of over 200 people supposedly have been murdered on Chisos. Now, this isn't recent, of course, because it would be all over the news, but supposedly in the early 1800s to the early 1900s, over 200 people have been murdered on Chisos. Now, it's not that far-fetched, right? When you consider the lost Chiso tribe, the murder bull, the Yorna, things such as, right, that there could be this high of a number. But apparently Chisos is just a bloodbath, is a battleground, and there's all kinds of spirits wandering Chisos. So, I mean, who knows? It could be true. Let's move on. Desert doppelgangers. So this phenomenon isn't specifically tied to Big Bend, although some hikers have reported seeing this, that apparently when you're hiking down a path, hiking down a trail, you look ahead or behind you and you can see what appears to be someone that looks just like you. Yes, a doppelganger is a person that looks like another person, but it's supposed to be, if you see one, it's bad news. Now, apparently people have claimed to have seen this. Now, most people chalk this up to just be heat exhaustion or mirages or whatever else, but I don't know. We've already talked about how many spirits there are. Who knows what it could be? Watch out. Let's move on. Phantom deer. So this one is more of a rumor and a ghost story. I've personally heard this one while at the park. Some hikers have reported seeing these white-tailed deers that I mentioned earlier, but they're being more translucent. They're looking right through you, and they can vanish right before your eyes. Now, obviously this could just be a story, but we already know these deer are elusive at times, and they can disappear quick. And we also know that deer, as far as native and indigenous people's lore go, is a spiritual animal, and they can be harbingers of messages. But then again, I don't know how this relates to Big Bend. There's also a story about phantom or ghosts sheep there too. So I don't know what to make of this one. It's just more of a scary story. Moving on. Bruja Canyon hauntings. So this might be the most mysterious area of Big Bend. Even the rangers will tell you not to go anywhere near it because it's so dangerous. But of course, if you want to check it out for yourself, hey, I won't stop you either. So it's near the Terlingua Abajo campsites, which I mentioned earlier. It's probably why I put it on the list, and now I'm just remembering. This canyon is mysterious and eerie, and apparently many people have claimed to have heard wailing ghostly spirits at night. Again, see mountain lions, but at the same time, bruja in Spanish translates to witch, and there's plenty of paranormal stories in Mexican folklore specifically about this desert area. So, if you want to go there for yourself and hear some of the wails, check it out. This is one of the most creepiest areas in Big Bend simply because of the lack of documentation. And of course, it's danger as people, if you're not experienced, you will easily get hurt trying to navigate this canyon. But anyway, let's move on. Every visit to Big Bend is personalized. All right, so this one started off as a joke, just like in my Beanie Babies Iceberg, but I began to think about it, and it's a bit more poetic when you think about it, right? Because every visit to Big Bend is unique. Everybody that goes there has a different story. Who knows? Maybe you'll be the one to hear the ghostly wails. Maybe you'll be the one to hear the creepy sounds on the Rio Grande. Maybe you'll just have a really good time. Maybe you'll find my lost wallet. Who knows? Maybe you'll get run up a tree by javelinas. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to find the lost gold of Chisos. Anyway, I really recommend you check out the park if you're in the area, if you're looking for a place to go on vacation. Or if you're in America, if you're not from the States, go check it out. I'm serious. I really want to go back there myself. And God willing, if I'm ever in a place where I'm not facing financial ruin, then I might go there myself, maybe do some videos, take some pictures for you all, and I'll actually post it online. But anyway, with that, and that was the Big Bend, Texas iceberg. What did you think? What did I get wrong? Can you expand on anything I talked about? Leave a comment down below. I want to hear some of your stories, or tell me where I got things wrong. If you liked the video, hit the like button and subscribe for more. And of course, memberships and super thanks are available as well. All I can give you in return is my thanks, and I really appreciate you. Furthermore, some of the music for this video was provided by Flash Haze, the YouTube channel. Check them out. They've been very cool to me. And stick around my channel for more. I've got another iceberg coming up, and it's going to be gaming related. You'll love it, I hope. Anyway, with that, I certainly hope you take care. Have a good one.